First thing you're going to do is get some rubber cement and the tool from my desk, and you need to fill in the white highlight that's on the apple. When doing a watercolor, you want to put the lightest layer on first. So the first layer I'm putting on is a bit of yellow. I've added a little bit of brown to this yellow so that it's not such a bright color straight out of the praying set. And I would suggest that you do that with most of your colors. Very rarely do I actually use just one straight color out of the set. Always mix it with a few others as you're working on this. As I'm doing this, notice that I'm keeping it fairly wet so that the colors will blend together. I'm going along the edges and kind of cleaning them up a little bit. If it gets a little dry, add a little bit more water as you're doing it. And after I get my first layer of yellow on, that's when I begin to add some brighter details in the areas that are actually going to stay yellow. So up around the top where the stem is coming out, and putting some into the leaf and into the stem. Between each of these layers, you are going to want to allow this to dry. I do have a blow dryer in the back of the room that I can show you that you can blow it dry with. But the next step then is to put some rubber cement on some of the dots. And if you look closely at the piece of paper, you will see yellow dots on that apple. So instead of having the white highlight, now we're going to have some little yellow dots. Some of those are a little bit streaked, so I do a little bit of streaking also. The next step is to begin to add some different shades of red, and so before you do this I would mix up several shades of red over there, adding various colors to it to get some different shades. Now when I started this I didn't really like the color that I had, and so I went back with the Kleenex and just pulled it out. And this is actually a technique you can do. You can put a little bit of color in and then pull it out again, and it leaves a little bit of that shade but not a lot. It's kind of a way you can correct a mistake as you go along. Then I've started putting in red, and as I did, I want you to streak it in, allowing some of the yellow to show through. If you notice, there are kind of streaky lines on the apple that you're going to show. And remember, we're going to put several layers of color on here, so don't worry about whether you get everything covered the first time. One side of the apple is a bit darker than the other. The other side has a bit more orange, and so as you start to streak in the different colors, remember that and kind of head your darker ones on one side and your lighter ones on the other. You can do some of both on each side, but that will kind of keep the light source looking like it's on one side and a darker kind of shadowy area on the other. Remember, as you add your layers, that you want to put your lighter ones on first and your darker ones on after that, leaving some of the previous layer showing as you continue to put layers on top of that. Also, in the area of the stem, you want to keep adding different layers of that as you wait for one layer to dry. You can go in and work on the stem and on the leaf at the same time. Don't be afraid to add in some darker shades. If it gets too dark, all you got to do is dab it with a Kleenex and it will leave, the shadow. Next thing you want to work on is the stem area. You want to kind of streak the apple into it and make it look like the apple is coming out. You're going to add some dark areas, especially on one side of the stem, to kind of make it look like there is a light source from one side. Add some various colors in there, but as you can see here, I'm kind of streaking that out into the red so that it looks like the two parts kind of come together, and also adding some shades to the stem and into the leaf. A good color to add to the yellow to get some darker shades besides brown is also a little bit of black, and maybe a little bit of green so that you have some different shades of yellow also. Last thing you're going to do is add a shadow underneath, and if you notice, there are kind of 3 layers of shadows underneath, and it does have a bit of a green tint to it. So I'm going to suggest taking some black, some green, a little bit of red, because there's always going to be a little bit of a reflection of the object color in the shadow, and do a darker layer first, and then work your way out to 2 or 3 different lighter areas, shaded areas. Remember that one of the ways that you can make it a lighter area is just by adding a little bit more water onto what you already have and just pulling out a little bit of that paint into that area. At the end, if you want to get the darker paint back towards the bottom of the apple, just pick it up and it will run back that direction, and then set it down and allow it to kind of fade out.